Alright group, so take a look at the landscape we're dealing with here today. This is swamp, this is marsh, and for most of us this is incredibly intimidating. Our imaginations are going to conjure up all kinds of images of crocodiles and snakes and turtles and any manner of creatures that are going to come out trying to bite us, trying to poison us, potentially making a meal out of us. And there is a bit of truth to that. With this much greenery, with this much moisture and water in the area, it's going to be a hub of life. Now there's two sides to this coin. If you have a lot of creatures around, if you have a lot of water, you're probably not going to starve to death. On the flip side, if you're out here surviving, that means that you're going to come across a lot more encounters. It's going to get very busy out here because you're sharing your space. Not only is it more likely for you to get bitten or get attacked, but even at nighttime, whenever the sun starts to dip down, this is going to be a mosquito paradise. So foraging in areas like this works out really well, but if you're going to build a camp, try and find some high ground, try and find some dry areas, because otherwise you're going to have a whole mess of issues to deal with. Now today we're going to be looking at foraging. So take a look at this green stuff I'm standing in. Most of you would say that that's scum or some kind of moss or algae. This is actually duckweed, and duckweed is a survival superfood. Now, I'm going to show you how to go about gathering it, how to prepare it, how to cook it, but if you come across this, you're going to be doing just fine. So let's go into the swamp and collect some duckweed. Come on, Huck. So, duckweed collection and preparation. Now there are a couple steps here, and you do need to follow the rules. You can't just go and scoop this up and start eating it. You might be able to get a few calories out of it that way, but the bigger issue is going to be the microorganisms, the bacteria, the creepy crawlies that you can't see but live in water like this. Now if you do go ahead and eat that raw, if you do just scoop it up, you're looking at severe weight loss, possible diseases, all kinds of parasites. That is not a good way to survive. Now there are different methods that I've seen people use in order to get the duckweed, strain it out, and rinse it off. We'll also need to cook it, but my favorite is to use gauze. A lot of times I have potato cloth, things like that, put it over a pot or a pan, some kind of bowl, and what we'll be doing is collecting as much of this as possible, putting it in here, and then rinsing it thoroughly with as clean of water as we can get to, and then we'll go on to cook it. Now what we're going to do is start to scoop it up, and you're going to have all kinds of detritus that comes with it. Might take you a little while to go ahead and separate that stuff, but in the long run, this is a lot of good food very quickly. Now, you also want to make sure that you are identifying the duckweed positively, because there's a lot of little creatures out here that you could possibly be collecting, and it's not going to be duckweed, which means you're not going to be getting the calories you think you're getting, and potentially it can harm you. So this that we're collecting right now is limone, okay, and it is a medium-sized duckweed, really tiny, really small, very edible, high in protein, high in calories, actually has quite a bit of fat in it. But it's tiny root hairs, 3 leaves. Again, there's lots of different types of this stuff, so kind of familiarize yourself with the area that you're in or where you'll be going to make sure you got what you think you got. There's some other kind of duckweeds that are smaller than this. Notably is wolfia, and it's really, really good. It's kind of like a sweet cabbage, smaller, more nutritious, and potentially a lot safer. All right, here's your close-up of the duckweed. And again, this is only one species. This one usually comes in leaf patterns of 3 with at least 1 root hair hanging down. Again, positively ID whatever you're trying to cook up and consume. Now the great thing is that these reproduce very quickly. So every day, every couple of days, they will double and multiply in population density. So even in an area like this, if it's been dry for months and months, if not years, and fills up with water, if the ducks come, if this plant is introduced to the water, it can easily, within 4, 5, 6 days, completely cover, just as you see back here, the entire surface of the water. So prolific growth is what you call that. All right, so here's our clean duckweed, or at least as clean as we've been able to get it. Now it's been strained, it's been rinsed quite a bit. Undoubtedly there's a few snails in there, a few pieces of bark that have managed to get through, but that is just the nature of this type of food. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and cook this duckweed. We're doing two things. We're cooking it to break down all the cellulose inside of the leaves, and we're also sterilizing the water that it's sitting in. And that's very important. Don't eat this stuff raw. So what we're going to do is get our coals ready in just a moment. Set this pan all the way down in the coals. We want to bring this up to a rolling boil for 3 to 5 minutes at least. It depends on elevation. The higher you are in elevation, the longer you want to boil this. But that's the idea. Sterilization, the killing, the death of all those microbes and all the bacteria. So err on the side of caution, boil it a few extra minutes. We'll go ahead and get this thing started, and then it's time to eat some. That ought to work. Trick now is getting your pan out, letting this thing cool down so that it's edible without losing it to the fire. Alright. In a few minutes, it ought to be ready. Now, that being said, we just straight up cook this after rinsing it and getting it ready. If you have a lot of duckweed, which you usually do, you can always go and lay it out and dry it, okay, and dehydrate it. It still needs to be cooked after that, but you can get a lot of biomass, dried biomass, dehydrated out, and have a meal for later. So it's not one of those things you have to pick and consume immediately, which makes it very, very convenient. Give it a few minutes, give it a taste. Okay, it's a little warm, but our duckweed is ready. So you can salt and pepper this to taste. Really, I'd use this as a garnish, something to go in a soup. Hopefully you've got some meat or something flavorful to go in there with it. But it's going to have kind of the taste of spinach, which, if you like spinach, works out really well. A spoonful at a time. Doesn't look very appetizing, but it goes down easy. Alright, and every once in a while you get the texture of a snail, which is additional protein. Now this was called a superfood at the very beginning because you have upwards of 5% fat in here. Fat's very important. You have up to 45% protein, depending on what kind of resources the plant has and the water source that you're pulling it out of. And from about 20 to 40% carbohydrate. That's dry mass. So as far as a food source, this thing is incredible. I hope y'all have learned something, guys. Again, collect it, try it, be safe, cook it all the way through, but duckweed, an amazing survival food. Like, subscribe, and as always, guys, till next time. The big issue we have with this type, okay, this limna, is that it's high in oxalic acid. Calcium oxalate is what it is before it really starts to get broken down into acid. And what that does is it starts to interfere with your kidneys, your filtration systems. If you eat too much of it without preparing it the way that I show you, the potential for hurting yourself, giving yourself kidney stones, or even shutting down your kidneys is a possibility. So everything in moderation. Now cooking this, we're going to get rid of a lot of it. Understand the amount of oxalic acid. It's usually about 2 to 4% by dry weight. At the same time, whenever you eat spinach, understand the spinach is actually about up to 1% oxalic acid. So you're still looking at something within the realm of one of the food groups that a lot of us eat regularly. So it's not poison, but it's something to definitely consider. The other thing is that the calcium oxalate, which becomes your oxalic acid, is going to be in higher concentrations if you're in an area that has high calcium. Now I'm in South Texas at this time. I don't have high calcium concentrations right now, but if I was in West Texas, that's just about all we pull out of the ground. That's all of our water. High calcium concentrations. So you definitely want to be concerned with that because it's a plant. Your nutritional values are going to fluctuate.